All right, what is up, YouTube? What's going on, everybody? Mike of the Nord TV here, coming at you guys with another boxing video. Um, I wanted to actually discuss what happened last weekend between Usyk and Verhoeven at the Pyramids of Giza in Egypt. Um, Basically, going into the fight, I was one of many who had predicted that Usyk was going to either win every single round or destroy Verhoeven very early on. For those who don't know, Rico Verhoeven is probably the best heavyweight kickboxer ever. At the very least, he's the best kickboxer in the last 10, 12 years. And basically the appeal of the fight was he's the best at kickboxing. Usyk's obviously one of the best in boxing. So it was just, out of curiosity, how well would he do against the best boxer because he's so dominant. Amazing. Knock it off, girl. Because he's so dominant in his sport. And Usyk is obviously dominant in his sport. So it was kind of a gimmick fight. Usyk's been saying for a while that he's wanted to do a show type of fight, just a gimmick fight. And he got it, and it was a very lucrative show. I don't think there's ever been a boxing match at the Pyramids of Giza, so, the scenery was pretty sick. It was a pretty cool thing to witness. Before I talk about the main event, very quickly, I wanted to talk about, I think Hamzat Shiraz won his fight. He's a champion at super middleweight now, as many predicted he would be. And then there was the fight between Frank Sanchez and Richard Torres Jr. I'm not going to lie, I thought Torres Jr. was probably going to win, or at the very least be more competitive than he was. I guess, I overestimated how good he was, and I shouldn't even say that. I mean, he just got caught with a good shot. He needs to really tighten up his defense. And it's kind of funny, before the pay-per-view, whatever the term is, I was watching Richard Torres's fight against I can't remember his name, but it's the only guy he went the distance with before. And I remember there was moments in the fight where he was lunging in, and the commentator was going, "Ooh, I don't like the way Torres lunges in. He's very susceptible to a counter," and that was ultimately his fate against Frank Sanchez. So I really thought Torres was going to win that one, but he took a tough loss. But he's still very young. There's been plenty of great fighters who have taken rough losses early in their careers. So. He's a talented guy. He's a good boxer. I think he could come back, but it was a rough loss. Anyway, just to talk about the main event, Usyk and Verhoeven. I was actually at work, and I was able to tune into the fight on my break at about the fourth round. And I remember watching it and thinking, is Usyk losing this fight? Because I don't really see Usyk landing any good punches, and Verhoeven looks like he's winning the rounds. He's just doing more, and it was very confusing because obviously Usyk has pretty much dominated the majority of his opponents. Even the fights that were close, he's clearly won them. And I'm just watching the fight go on, and I'm like, why am I not seeing more from Usyk? And, the analysts came in later, and they were able to see, okay, Verhoeven's style is awkward. His feints were, throwing Usyk off guard. His movement was very good. I thought his jab was excellent as well. I'm a big fan of good jabs. So, his movement was very, very weird for Usyk. And that's kind of what I wanted to talk about. So before we get into the stoppage, and I was thinking about this the other night in my hot tub, is, a lot of people are using this performance to discredit Usyk, and my argument in favor of Usyk would be that when you're, 39 years old, you're at the tail end of your boxing career. You've accomplished many great things. Prior to turning pro, you even had a amazing amateur career, which even just that amateur career alone, even if he had never gone pro, people would still remember Usyk. And even his cruiserweight alone, and just the first few fights with Joshua, Usyk was already just legendary. And the fact that he went on to beat Fury twice, Dubois twice, is just an incredible feat. And I still think, without question, it's still not arguable that Usyk isn't a great boxer. But when you've trained a certain style and it's worked for you for 24 nights as a professional, and you go against a guy who isn't some bum, this is a guy who's the greatest ever in just a slightly different sport that is the same thing, but it just allows kicks. And you're 39, you're coming in at a career heaviest weight. You're not as active as you used to be. I think Usyk's averages 1 or 2 fights a year. He hasn't been the most active fighter, And as I mentioned, he's coming in at career heaviest weight. He's only getting older. With all these, aspects, it's not impossible to have a tough night. He's going in there with someone who's trained very hard, very motivated, great fighter in his own right. He comes in with an awkward style, and he gave Usyk some trouble. I mean, it could happen. You could have a tough night. You could have a rough night at the office. It's possible. And, Lennox Lewis has had bad nights. Holyfield's had tough nights. Tyson's had tough nights. Ali has had tough nights. Joe Louis has had tough nights. Vladimir Klitschko has had tough nights. Fury has had tough nights. Joshua has had tough nights. Every single champion has tough nights, and even the greatest, if we're not even talking about heavyweights, Mayweather, Leonard, Duran, Hearns, Hagler, Robinson, Greb, goes on. Everyone's had tough nights against guys that people did not expect them to have any trouble with. And I think that's where people were getting too carried away, like, oh, Usyk got exposed. He did not get exposed. He had a rough night against a guy who, like I said, is maybe the greatest ever in a slightly different sport that simply allows you to just throw kicks. It's just boxing with kicks added to it. And very determined, very motivated to pull off this upset. In tremendous shape, great athlete. He's bigger than Usyk. There's so many factors that go into this, and I'm not gonna lie, I didn't think Usyk was gonna have any trouble with him, but I was wrong, and I think a lot of people were. And I just do not buy into this argument that Usyk got exposed. I still think Usyk's a great fighter, but he had a rough night, and there's a lot of good explanations for it. Now, obviously, going into the 11th round, I thought Usyk was losing. I'm on my lunch at work. I'm terrified. I'm literally watching the fight unfold, and I am horrified. Like, I'm terrified. I'm watching Usyk, who I was thinking was about to lose, and I'm like, this is gonna screw everything up. This is gonna screw up everything. Like, this is gonna make boxing look so bad. And that was what I was thinking. I was horrified. And part of me was thinking, I think they're gonna, some of these rounds, I think if I'm judging like non-biased professionally, I think Verhoeven was winning the fight. Like, I think Usyk maybe had like 2 or 3 rounds in there, but Verhoeven, he already had the lead secured going into the last rounds. I mean, he had the win secured. But I was thinking that I was hoping. I'm gonna be honest. I was hoping like they're gonna give Usyk the win because this could not happen. Selfishly, I was hoping Usyk would win. Selfishly, very selfishly. But the right thing was to let Verhoeven carry on and get his win. Now, let me get into where I'm going with this. So, as many of you know, Usyk was, in the 11th round, he caught Verhoeven with an uppercut, a counter shot, and Verhoeven goes down. He gets back up. His mouth guard, fell out of his mouth. He's given additional time to collect his mouth guard, put it back in his mouth. Usyk comes in, reins in a combination, lands a couple solid shots, and a second prior to the bell, the referee decides to step in and stop it. Now, there was some controversy that the referee stopped it after the bell. I think if you watch the footage, it is quite clear that the referee had decided he was going to stop it before the bell rang. So, I think that erases that controversy. But just the stoppage itself. Let's assume that there was a minute left in the round. Right? Just the stoppage itself. I think it wasn't a horrific stoppage. It wasn't awful. But the problem lies really in the stakes. So, like, basically what I've said about it is, had the roles been reversed, had Usyk been the one in trouble and Verhoeven was the one on the attack, there's no doubt in my mind the fight would have continued. But I do think there is some truth and some possibility that the referee saw it as a good opportunity to save Usyk. And the stoppage in itself wasn't horrible. I think it was okay, fair enough, as just a stoppage. But I still think that I still think it should not have been stopped. Because when you're a round away from winning the unified championship of the world, beating a guy who's undefeated, and doing it in incredible fashion in only your second fight, I think that's a lot to take away from somebody, considering the stoppage, how weak it was. That's a lot to take away from somebody, who really was still on his feet, still seemed conscious, still seemed fine. At the end of the day, it's boxing. It's not 100% safe. But the referee, I think, felt that Verhoeven was done enough, and he stepped in and saved him. Like I said, I think the stoppage was fair, but I do think there's also a part of it where the referee did see it as an opportunity to save Usyk and give Usyk the win. That's just my opinion. I think the right thing to do was to let Verhoeven go out on his shield. Now, the thing that I'll wrap this whole thing up. I'm gonna wrap the video up with this. Now, had Verhoeven gone up and finished the round, and he goes out and he wins the next round on points, he goes out and wins the next round, Usyk would have won because they released the scorecards, the official scorecards after. Usyk would have won by a split decision, majority or a split decision. That would have been probably a robbery. I might rewatch the fight and see how close some of these rounds were, but I do think personally Verhoeven was up, and it was a pretty crazy night. And I don't think Usyk was exposed. I think he just had a rough night. He's getting older. I think the fight with Cabell might be his last. And I'll save that prediction. I'll save that for another video. But thanks for watching, guys. Let me know what you guys think about it. As always, it's Mike of the North TV, and I'll catch you all later. Peace.